the most amazing thing for me is when customers will be using our product and see the value in it, and it helps them just be incredibly successful. I don't think there's a better feeling in the world than that.
You're listening to What Fuels You, where we deep dive with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to learn more about their stories and uncover nuggets of wisdom we can all use. I'm your host, Shauna Swerland, CEO of Fuel Talent, an award-winning recruiting firm based in Seattle. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Mike Kropp. Mike is the founder and CEO of Iridius, a Seattle-based company building compliance-ready AI infrastructure for highly regulated industries like pharma and biotech. A technology executive with over 25 years of leading engineering teams at Microsoft and AWS, Mike has played a crucial role in developing innovative products and expanding their global business adoption, forging strategic alliances with industry giants. Mike uses a collaborative, working backward approach to deliver products that help customers innovate and create high-impact solutions for their companies. Welcome, Mike. So good to see you. Thanks for joining.
Of course, Donna. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to interview you. I loved doing the research, and I think our audience is in for a treat. Okay. So this is a hard one, but out of the gate, I'm just going to hit you hard. Ready? What is your hidden talent?
One is help people believe that they can do things they don't believe they can do. I've had it happen many times in my career where they said, we can't do X, but unfortunately it was an imperative and we had to do it. And bringing out the best in people to achieve an objective is really one of the things I do well.
What is the first thing that you do when you wake up? And are you like one of those 5 a.m. people?
I am a very early guy, usually around 6. I'm up and I'm already on my phone responding to emails that come in the evening and planning through my day, what I need to accomplish, and obsessing about winning customers' hearts and minds and helping them be successful.
What was your first concert?
Elton John.
Oh, that's a good one.
In Seattle. Yeah, it was great.
So tell me, I know you grew up right in this area in Seattle, right?
I did.
And what was your upbringing like? How would you describe it?
I would describe it as very different than what kids do today. You know, we were always out playing sports and even in our street. And baseball in the morning, I'd be one of the first guys up in the morning at 6 a.m., go knock on windows to try to get guys to come out and play sports. So I played a lot of different sports, but really did zero in on soccer. And I played that my entire life.
Yeah. So you were super into soccer. And when you were thinking about kind of your dreams as a kid, I guess we all kind of did not and also did think about these things. What were you kind of envisioning as far as what you wanted to be?
Early on, I was taking some class. All my classes were pretty mad in my first 2 years. My dad was the chief of plastic surgery for Children's Hospital, and was also in private practice. And then his best friend was Dr. Stumps, who was the chief of neurosurgery. They took me on a walk in a place called Indianola, which is on the water, and they asked me one question, and they said, "Why do you want to be a doctor?" And I said, well, one, I think I could do it academically. 2, I want to help people. And then 3, I said, if I do a great job, look at you guys. You're very successful. There's a road to success there. And they asked me one question that literally changed my life. They said, you've been in school for 2 years. What do you love to do? And I said, I took my first coding class and I said, I love to write code. And they said, well, computers are going to be the thing of the future. You could do that if you love it. And they kind of framed it up as, look, if you follow your passion, you're never going to work a day in your life. And I'm still doing computing and I still love it and I'm challenged by it every day.
Yeah, I love that. Tell me about the college kind of application / choosing process.
I started out at a junior college and transferred to Seattle Pacific. Actually, first I transferred to the UW. And getting into the School of Computer Science at the UW was, and I worked my way through school. So I was working
Good
full
for
time
you.
and going to school full time. And I didn't have a 3.9, which was the requirement in my era to get into the School of Computer Science. So I transferred over to Seattle Pacific. And then after Seattle Pacific, I went back to the University of Washington and went through the management program that was paid for by the company I was working for at the time. And then once I was in Microsoft, I was selected for the Leadership Bench program back in about the year 2000. And I went through the Wharton Leadership Development Program.
So that's something that they like tap you for at Microsoft, and then
Yeah, they picked like the top 50 or so, could be different now, but they picked about the top 50 up and coming leaders that they wanted to invest in.
yeah, that's very cool. So looking back, was that the right choice for you? And how did it align with, I guess, what was important to you? Because it sounds like you were working, you were going to school, you were finding your passion. Those are such pivotal, kind of informed years for someone.
They were. And I'd say that some of the most important training I got was learning how to ship products at Microsoft and the hands-on experience of leading people, not just across a company, but across the world, right? I had
Yeah,
teams all over the world building software in Bangkok and Beijing and Hyderabad, and then we had
wow,
some in the different places in the United States where, Boston and Washington, D.C. and Redmond.
that's incredible. How did you get the job there? Like, tell me about, were they doing recruiting on campus, or did you know someone? Did you just apply cold?
No, I applied cold and ended up getting hired, brought into multiple teams to have conversations. And then ultimately I got hired by the IT organization, ITG at the time. And I was responsible in that role for all of the sales and marketing applications across the world as a first job.
That's crazy. That's a big job.
The tough part of it, I'd say, was because it's sales and marketing. At the time, Steve Ballmer was the head of sales and marketing for the world, and he reported to Bill. And I had to have frequent interactions with executives, like within 4 months of being hired there. It was quite a hill to climb to be able to kind of address and work with some, Jeff Rakes and Steve Ballmer and Orlando Ayala, all powerhouse thinkers. And you had to be
Huge.
able to think on your feet and be quick.
Yeah. So I read, as I was researching, that you've worked with like AWS, Intel, BMW. I mean, big companies. What did you learn in those, like how to build relationships at the large level? I find, we work with startups and we work with enterprise. Startups for me are a lot easier because it's just like the path to like meeting someone is so much faster. Some of these bigger companies are so hard to navigate. How did you learn how to navigate inside big companies?
Well, the hard part about navigating big companies, I learned at Microsoft, because when you think about all the subsidiaries across the world, they all have different interests. They may be driving to similar goals, but they're unique to their region. And so you have to be sensitive and learn what is it that's important to them and working with them. So that was one. And then you're working across the world. So then you have cultural differences, right? That you have to factor into how you operate with people. Outside of Microsoft, working with companies like BMW and others, I was lucky because I got introduced at the top senior levels where they were trying to implement technology.
That's great. Because sometimes that's hard because you don't know who's the decision maker and how to get to that person. So that's great you were in those rooms.
Yeah, and I'd say the hardest one, or the toughest experience I had was I was asked by the CIO of Nissan after my team had built some capabilities at Microsoft to integrate a couple of our products. He went to our president and said, "We want Mike to help us in Japan, build out a new capability to power their business." And I wouldn't move there, but I ended up doing 32 trips back and forth to Japan from Seattle.
Oh my gosh. So was that
Yeah.
your hardest year, would you say? Or your hardest period of time?
It was a 2-year period. Yeah, that was the toughest one for sure.
Interesting. I'm sure. I mean, just also researching for today, I read like trust and discipline come up a lot. when researching you and researching your career. Where does that come from? Is this just your own innate magic formula, or is there someone that you can point to that's like, I remember to this day that conversation and that kind of stuck with me?
I've had a bunch of those conversations in my career with leaders that I just totally admired and learned from. But I would say the learning that you have when you're in business, whether you're working with a customer or you're working inside a company, is you make a commitment, you pay it off, and you try to exceed expectations when you deliver. And so I'm a big believer and have expectations around, if you make commitments to customers, to partners, anybody you're interacting with, you pay it off. That's how you earn trust.
100%.
And earning trust is absolutely critical. And it's one of the things when I was at AWS that they actually have a leadership principle called earn trust. And like I said, you just got to make commitments and pay them off, deliver results.
And so you were at Microsoft over 20 years. Most of my friends who started around the same time as you are still there because it's like they give you, you get in there, you got the golden handcuffs, hard to leave. What was going through your mind in like those years, 2016, 17, 18, I guess, before you left?
Yeah, in 18, I'd been married just a couple of years, a second marriage, and I, was going back and forth to Japan so many times, and I finally got into a role which was, I would say, a deeper engineering role, and I just decided at the time that it was time for me to kind of move on and try something different. And I wanted to take a year off because at Microsoft, what they do, when you hit a certain age and you've been there over 15 years, you could still keep all your stock that you have that's not vested, and it'll continue to vest over 4 years. And so I decided to go travel with my wife and take a
That's
year
so
off.
cool.
Yeah, and it ended up being a year and a half. And then I was recruited by AWS to come over and help them build a brand new service in their product teams.
And what was that new service?
It was a database migration and application modernization service, where what we did is we went out and bought a company, and it was several hundred engineers in Poland. And we took over building those, I would call it migrations for customers. Some of the big customers like Johnson and Johnson, Gartner Group, a bunch of big companies. And we would commit to doing those at a fixed fee. And we were in product engineering. And we'd also commit to modernizing their applications, which means they're rewriting them and doing the unit testing. Then we give it back to them to do functional and end user testing. But the whole strategy was to drive adoption of AWS technology faster and not take dependencies on the third parties all the time. And a third party would be a consulting firm, system integrator.
Yeah. And how was that transition? I know the two cultures could not be more different. Like, how would you describe the Microsoft culture and how would you describe the Amazon culture? Seattleites probably have a better sense, but who knows who's listening? It might be helpful to hear the comparison.
They're very, very different cultures. I would say both have leadership principles. The expectations are similar around making commitments, driving for results, being customer focused. The big difference was, and it's changed with Satya at the helm. When I started, it was a know-it-all culture, and meaning that people prided themselves on what they knew, and they would be grounded in what they knew. And I would say that even there was a little bit of arrogance. And when Satya came in, he turned the corner and basically said it's a learn-it-all culture and a customer-obsessed culture around helping customers. So I think that was a really healthy move for Microsoft. And AWS, when I went in there, they had 12 leadership principles. And now it's 14 or 15. But I really understood and admired and valued the fact that they had leadership principles that were written down, that they validated as you were hired. They would literally break apart leadership principles and give them to 5 interviewers. And one would test for a couple of them, think big, customer obsessed. Another one would think about drives for results, earns trust, So not only did they have a hiring profile against those leadership principles, but they live them every day. And what that looks like, which is way different than what I experienced at Microsoft, is you'd be in a meeting and we'd say, well, we're going to narrow the scope and focus on this market segment, right? And people in the room would challenge you. I don't think that's really thinking big. And so they use them in daily meetings to drive decision-making on the teams. And with those leadership principles, the beauty of them, in my opinion, we have them at Iridius. We have our own, but what you're trying to do is get decision-making down to people that are really should be responsible for making the decision rather than having all the decisions get pushed up to the top. It allows you to go faster. It allows you to make higher quality decisions. And at Amazon, they have a notion of 1- and 2-way doors, right? A 1-way door is a critical decision that requires inspection and leadership review. A 2-way door is a decision you can make and you can hit the undo button and try something different. In other words, you're learning your way to the right decision without much consequence.
Mm-hmm. And Amazon, I know, like overarches, with the bar raiser involved with the interview process on somebody who's not just skilled, but can also be a great culture add. And using those leadership principles in that process helps them get there. Did you feel like Microsoft was also kind of doubling down on that philosophy, or it's more just like they can do the job?
There's the, I would say, notion of a bar raiser at Microsoft. It's an as appropriate. It's called an AA internally. They may or may not have it now. It's a few years ago. But that as appropriate would make the final call. So the team would vote and you take a look at all the feedback, then you'd be able to make that decision. Now, the way that we did it there was if I was an as appropriate, if I couldn't think of 3 jobs that I know you would get hired at within Microsoft, we wouldn't hire you.
Oh, wow.
And the reason is, at the time, you would end up with multiple careers at Microsoft, right?
Like a little entrepreneurial opportunities.
Exactly. And I mean, the challenge is that when you're in a big company like that, you have initiatives that start up and people swarm to build teams and build these products, for example. But at some point, those products may not need the same size of team. And so people go to other teams. So if you can't be nimble and useful in multiple roles, I personally didn't hire them. Now, that being said, the bar raiser is a different, equally, I would say, important role in many ways, I think, superior. And the reason is that when you look at the role of a bar raiser, if the person being interviewed, and let's just say it's at level 7, isn't better than 50% of the existing level 7s, it's a no hire. And that's why they call them a bar raiser, is it does this person raise the bar within the company.
I love that. It's so important to remember. I mean, I feel like Amazon, for all of its flaws, has so many incredible strengths. Did you think that you were staying there long term and then came up with this Iridius idea, or was this all part of the plan to kind of just be there for a few years?
No, I would say it wasn't part of my plan, but when you saw AI starting to take off 2.5 years ago, I knew this was going to be a major tech wave that I wanted to be part of. And I ended up going back to school at MIT to study AI, which is great. But it's kind of one of those things where your path isn't always straight to where you're trying to get to.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. So I didn't know that you went back to school to MIT. That's very cool. I remember when I bought a book and it's like so funny. You can't even read a book now on AI because it's like by the time you turn a page, it's like new something has come out. Like makes no sense to read a book. It's better to just constantly be researching. What do you use in your day-to-day life? And I want to get into Iridius and the idea, but personally, what do you use as far as your AI kind of daily habits?
I go back and forth between ChatGPT and Claude. So it really depends upon what I'm trying to do. The thing that I love about Claude right now is that there's an integration. You can have something called Notion, which stores projects. And so we have a collective project at Iridius. And what that means is we have a lot of our detailed files stored in Notion, which allows you, Claude, to integrate with it So when you're using Claude, you could say integrate with Notion on all the projects that are there to get more context. So it's the quality of the result is fantastic because it's got more context about Iridius. And that way I can get very precise in responses out of Claude that are fantastic.
And what do you use ChatGPT for?
I've used it for writing and some things like that historically, but I'd say right now, 80% of my time is in Claude.
Yeah, me too. And so you started Iridius June 24-ish. Did you bootstrap or go out right away and raise capital?
Oh, no, we bootstrapped it. It was founder funded we just closed our seed round.
Yeah, so I know in April you raised 8.6 million, but before that, up until this point, it's been bootstrapped. And tell me about the founding team. It's you and you have a co-founder?
I have two other co-founders. One of them is Mark Turley, and Mark was a formerly at KPMG, and he was a controller. He's their CFO and COO, and he had done major projects for KPMG, like running all the books for Costco and also for Philip Morris. And he moved to Amsterdam for 3 years to do that. And then he came back and he went to Amazon, and he actually was responsible for doing several of the major acquisitions from the finance side, like Whole Foods, PillPack, and others. And then he went off to a company called HighSpot, which is a local startup company by a couple of ex-former Microsoft folks that I used to work with. And the other one is Alistair Low-Norris. And Alistair was at Microsoft 23 years. He built several products there that you probably know, like SharePoint, Active Directory. And his final engagement was really focused on safe and responsible AI and rolling that out across the company. And he worked directly for Satya.
And so how did this partnership come together? Did you have the idea and you kind of were like, now do I need to go tap for this?
It did. Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't sure. It was very shortly after I engaged with Alistair and Mark. We started to really kind of get the idea of, well, what's the big gap, right, in our belief in with AI? And we all kind of settled on, if it isn't safe and responsible and isn't compliant, a lot of the big businesses in the world will not adopt it.
Yeah. And so what is the business model as far as what you do and who do you compete with?
The business model is pretty clear. We're a product company, not a services company. And so it's licensed revenue right now for our product, which is still GA. So we're still fine-tuning some of how we think to price the product. That being said, a key vertical focus that we have is in pharma and life sciences.
And who are you targeting within the company as far as the value proposition that you're bringing? You're saying to them, hey, our product can help your AI, everything be compliant. So if it's pharma, obviously it's a highly regulated industry. Same with
very highly
life sciences. And so who are you calling within the company? Is it the CTO?
We pulled together an advisory board. We call it the Growth Advisory Board. And they're all former CIOs or CIDOs from the likes of Merck, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, and Bayer, and others. And the reason that we've done that is to, pressure test our thinking about how we go to market, who we should be talking to. And we've been fortunate where we've got a lot of, I would say, hot introductions to the right buyer and decision maker.
Well, smart to have those be your board members.
Yeah. And it's the interesting part about it is there's really a couple of angles that we see this coming down to in terms of you're asking, who's your ICP? And we look at the head of R&D that's actually responsible for the drug development value chain and building drugs is one of them. And then the other one could be on the technical side, like the chief information officer.
And how did you choose pharma as your go-to-market strategy, industry-wise?
This is a great question too. When we started, we were thinking like Microsoft and AWS was thinking horizontal. That does not work in a startup. You've got to be very focused. And so we narrowed down the vertical focus for a couple of reasons. Number one, Microsoft started to bring us to some of their top pharma customers who are blocked from adopting AI in production because they can't understand how to get the compliance right in design, not after the fact. And that's precisely where we focused and we were building the entire time. And so Microsoft would bring us in. We started to narrow down the vertical. And then I met a gentleman from K2 named Clark Golestani. And Clark was the former CIO at Merck and president for 23 years. And he was a founder at K2 Access Fund, which is a venture capital firm. And he basically said, this is going to be huge. I want to be part of this. I'll do whatever you guys want. And we brought Clark in and invited him to be on our board of directors. And so he's on our board and he knows everybody in the industry. So it's been super helpful for us to kind of advance our way.
That's awesome. And so you raised 8.6 million in your seed round. Is it Chalfin Ventures? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Mike Chalfin Ventures. Mike's in London.
And then Accenture Ventures.
Accenture Ventures is another one, but one thing to note is that the raise actually went up to 10.1.
Oh, you like got more than you even looked for.
Yeah,
that's great.
We were well oversubscribed. So, and we had Osage Venture Partners is one of the big investors, and so is Accenture.
Wow. And so how did you go as far as deciding kind of who your first few hires would be, and how many team members do you have now?
We have 10 team members. The first few hires that we made out of the gate were engineering roles. And we have brought in some, I would say, great talent out of former AWS people that have been, not AWS, Amazon, that have just been instrumental in helping stand the company up. Now, of course, we're scaling engineering in a big way.
That's exciting. And so what do you look for as far as attributes of who would be successful on your team? And I guess I'm kind of obsessed with this whole idea of, I do a lot of work with startups, and sometimes they make the mistake. There's a lot of mistakes that you see in hiring, and it's either over titling early or not thinking for kind of who's the right fit for 2 years from now or 4 years from now. How do you think through all those things, and as far as the attributes for today, tomorrow, and like a year or two from now that would work well there?
The first thing we look for is how hungry is this person to learn, right? And how fast can they learn? And what is their track record around that shows that they've been able to learn and adapt their skills? That, I think, is the name of the game today with AI, is that the things we're doing today that we have to do today, we won't need to do them tomorrow, right? And we don't know where this is going to end, but I can tell you, since we started this company, the capabilities of AI have, it's logarithmic. Yeah, exponentially more powerful.
Yeah.
And so learning, adapting, being customer focused, and being able to do whatever it takes to get the job done.
Yeah. And so your philosophy around kind of like A's, hiring A's, what do you mean by that? I mean, I agree completely.
I'll tell you the origin of that. At Microsoft, I went to our executive team with my boss, who was a vice president at the time. And we pitched to, the SLT, senior leadership team, Steve Ballmer and all of them at Microsoft, around building a team that would literally give away code to developers, frameworks and tools to help them understand how to better use our platform. And we got approved. And I was given a bunch of headcount and a bunch of money to go build this team. And my then boss at the time, a guy named Mike Nash, brought me in a room and said, Kropp, A's hire A's, B's hire C's and D's. And he said, go hire A's. And he goes, hire people smarter than you, hire people that challenge you and challenge everything in the organization, and will deliver results and win. And that's precisely what we did with that group. And we had a huge impact. And I think, that advice is something I'll never forget.
It's great advice. And where do you think, I mean, I know you said like AI has grown exponentially and like huge, crazy growth since you started the business. And that's even more so probably in the next 6 months. Where do you see AI going and where are the blind spots, do you think, for the average human?
The other vector that people should be watching, and it's way early, but it's quantum computing.
Hmm.
And there's a great book that you can take a look at called Quantum Supremacy by Michio Kaku. He's a physicist. And in his book, he talks about the capabilities of AI and where it's going to go and what are the possibilities for mankind. And when we think about that, what we're doing is trying to accelerate the drug development life cycle by reducing the amount of human involvement in managing compliance systems and building them. And so when you think about that, what are the outcomes of that? Drugs get to market faster. We learn more about what works and what doesn't from a scientific perspective faster. So this whole system is getting accelerated. And that is just one small vertical. Now think about all of the world. Think about financial services, think about energy, you think about all these capabilities are getting amplified. That's the world we're going to live in. And it doesn't mean that, when we look at it from a personal perspective, does it mean that we should learn AI and know how to use it and take advantage of it? That's the most important advice I give to anybody right now, whether you're in business or whether it's just your personal life. You can use AI for a lot of things. Like I know people that don't use Google anymore. They go straight to AI.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use it because why use it? I mean, even though that
Why?
when you're in Google,
Exactly.
it's like the AI is already set up, but it's not as robust.
Here's the difference for me is that I don't get any ads.
Yeah.
The AI, I go straight to the material, and then I get the trade-off of why is this one good versus a different one?
Well, it also gets to know you.
Oh, it does. Absolutely. And
Yeah,
your
there's crazy
preferences.
stuff. I'm not sure if you've played around, but that's a fun little like party trick. Like literally put in there something like, if you had to guess what I look like, what would you say? Or describe my personality to me. You like as if you're, an org psych kind of assessment tool. I mean, it's crazy how accurate it is. It's creepy, but I think it's actually pretty fun. And what about your business? Like, what are you picturing if you're like, hey, I feel successful, this has been a win. What will that look like?
Right now, number one is we want to earn trust with all the top farmers out across the world to be the gold standard on how to implement safe, responsible AI by automating compliance. Think of it as compliance as code, and it becomes integrated into your entire software development lifecycle. And you're able to generate workflows with AI fast that are designed correctly, that are compliant by design, and when you run them. And that's a big goal. And it's a big challenge. It's a hard problem to solve, but I believe we'll solve it. And, we're getting the right signals from customers that we're focusing on a major pain point for them.
Yeah, that's exciting. And as far as your life outside of work, what do you do to set yourself up for a good week, a good day, and how do you relax?
I spend time with my wife playing golf once in a while. We go boating on Lake Washington, which is when we moved back to Seattle. The first thing she said is, got to buy another boat. And the other thing that we do, we have 2 golden retrievers, and I take them down to Marymore Park every day and let them go crazy and run for a couple miles.
So fun. And what about any apps or any tools that you use that help you stay organized or help you? I know that you said that you use Notion Project and Claude, but is there like, hey, when I wake up in the morning, these are my rituals, aside from going on your email?
Yes, there are a couple of rituals. I have one of them is I will go to LinkedIn. I get a lot of requests there, and I have a lot of interaction with other colleagues that I've formerly worked with. I will also go, I don't know if you've used it lately, but Teams has gotten really, really good compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, I use Teams.
We have a lot of interaction in Teams, 24/7. And so that's kind of a quick place I hit to kind of get context on where things are at and understand kind of the key things that I need to do throughout the day to prepare for kind of what's ahead.
So tell me, Mike, through your incredible career, have you had, even in your childhood, like have you had mentors along the way?
Absolutely. I'll give you one in my childhood, and he was a coach of mine. His name was Al Kovacs, and Al was one of the best athletes I'd ever met at the time. And he grew up playing soccer. So he was a subject matter expert in soccer. And he taught us to play a very controlled game of soccer where we would get 20 touches on the ball when we were in ninth grade. And if you gave up possession, you would get pulled off and he'd have a question of why you were trying to force the ball. And so you learned quickly if you wanted to play, you didn't give up the ball. And I finally see our American team starting to play that way. Where you look at Spain or you look at and France, they just play a very controlled soccer. So he was a big influence on me. The other one that was an incredibly major influence on me was a guy named John Connors. And John, when I started in IT at Microsoft, John was our CIO. My first all hands meeting back in 1997 in April was at the convention center in Bellevue. And I was kind of lost. I made my way there and I go into the elevator to go up to the event from the parking garage. And this guy is in the elevator with me. And he looked at me and said, "Hello, Mr. Kropp." And I didn't know who he was. I said, "Hi." He goes, "This is your first all hands?" I said, "It is." And I thought, how does this guy know who I am? Well, we go into the all hands meeting. There's thousands of people in the IT organization at the convention center. They dim the lights and the guy comes on and says, "Please welcome John Connors." He was the CIO. He knew who I was. I don't know how. And, he was one of the best leaders I've ever had in my life. And I learned a lot from him. I stayed connected to him throughout my career at Microsoft and beyond when he went to Ignition Partners, but he ultimately became the CFO of the company. That, I think, is one of those keys in your career. If you're thinking about growing and you're obsessed with it and wanting to improve, find people that you admire that have skills and can help you and learn from them.
That's great advice. Love it. My final question for you is what fuels you?
I'd say that the most amazing thing for me is when customers will be using our product and see the value in it, and it helps them just be incredibly successful. I don't think there's a better feeling in the world than that. And when you kind of extrapolate that to the broader question, which is what really motivates me, is having worldwide impact. The team I told you about earlier is called Patterns and Practices. That was an idea. And within 4 years, they did surveys around the world, and we had 29% of developers using our stuff around the world and 37% of architects. Once you've tasted fruit off the worldwide impact tree, there's kind of nothing like it. And that to me is what's driving us at Iridius. We want to have an impact on the planet for better.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. If you'd like to check out past episodes to hear from more business leaders, go to fueltalent.com/podcast. And if you have a minute, please leave a review and rating on your favorite podcast app, or share this episode with a friend or colleague. Please share any feedback or interview suggestions for other guests by sending a message to podcast@fueltalent.com. I'm Shauna Sperland, and thanks again for listening.